What if the CEO you challenged in a crowded elevator turned out to be the man who would change your life forever? A young delivery girl walked into a high-stakes law firm, humiliated a senior attorney in front of the board, saved the company from losing $5 million, and then faced the one question that would flip her world upside down. Will you marry me? You won't believe how this story ends. Stay until the very last second. If this story gave you chills, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next jaw-dropping story. And tell us in the comments, would you have had the courage to stand up to that CEO? Share this video with someone who loves a good twist ending. Emily Carter sprinted through the cold morning air, clutching a thick contract folder to her chest. Her sneakers slapped against the pavement, her breath coming in sharp bursts. If she didn't make this delivery on time, she could kiss her paycheck goodbye. At 25, she couldn't afford even a single missed shift. Rent was due in 3 days, and the electric bill wasn't going to pay itself. She skidded to a stop in front of the towering glass doors of Anderson & Cole Law Firm, the kind of place where the lobby smelled like fresh-cut roses and money. A quick swipe of her employee badge, a deep breath, and she pushed inside. The marble floor gleamed. The front desk receptionist didn't even look up. Typical. Emily tightened her grip on the folder and headed straight to the bank of elevators. The golden elevator doors slid open, and a rush of people poured in. Men and women in perfectly tailored suits, polished shoes clicking on the marble. Emily squeezed in before the doors shut, pressing herself against the corner. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she checked the time on her phone. 2 minutes to spare. I can do this? But then, beep, beep, beep. The elevator jolted slightly, and the panel lit up with the words, "Weight limit exceeded." Everyone froze. A man near the buttons muttered under his breath. A woman in a navy pencil skirt shot an annoyed glance around the cramped space. Emily's heart dropped as tension filled the air. "Someone needs to step out," a sharp-voiced attorney said, looking straight at her. Emily blinked. Sweat trickled down her back. Wait, who was the last one in? Her eyes scanned the crowd until they locked on the tall man in the charcoal suit standing near the doors. He wasn't looking at anyone in particular, just scrolling on his phone with the calm confidence of someone who owned the world. "You," she said, pointing directly at him. Her voice rang louder than she expected. "You got in after me." The man's head lifted slowly. He had dark hair, sharp eyes, and that kind of lazy smile that wasn't really a smile at all. It was a challenge. "Me?" His tone carried mild amusement, but his raised brow hinted at disbelief. "Yes. If someone has to step out, it should be the last person who got in. Basic line etiquette." Emily's voice didn't waver. A few people exchanged uneasy glances. One of the lawyers shifted uncomfortably, but the man in the charcoal suit didn't move. He crossed his arms, tilting his head slightly, as though assessing her like a puzzle he hadn't expected to solve. "I'm not leaving," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "I have a meeting upstairs in 5 minutes, a meeting that could decide someone's future." Emily felt her stomach tighten, but she planted her feet. "And I have a delivery due in exactly 3 minutes. If I'm late, I get docked. That could decide my future." Her words came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't back down. The man's smile widened, just a fraction. "Do you have any idea who you're talking to?" "Nope," Emily shot back. "And I don't care. Etiquette's etiquette." The elevator went so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat hammering in her ears. The other passengers stared, their faces caught somewhere between shock and admiration. Then the man spoke again, softer this time, leaning in just enough that she could feel the weight of his presence. "I'm Ethan Blake," he said, eyes locking on hers. "CEO of this firm. The person everyone here works for." A ripple of surprise swept through the elevator. Someone gasped. Another whispered, "Oh my God." But Emily didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good for you," she said, her voice steady, "but CEOs can wait too." A beat of silence followed, thick and electric. The attorneys exchanged nervous glances. One man stepped forward quickly. "I'll get out," he blurted, unable to take the tension. He squeezed past Ethan, and the elevator doors finally slid shut with a heavy clang. Emily let out the breath she'd been holding, but her pulse still thundered. She could feel Ethan's gaze on her as the elevator began its climb. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of amusement and something else. Curiosity, maybe. Inside that cramped metal box, with the weight of a dozen strangers pressing in, Emily Carter had just done the unthinkable. She had stood her ground against a man who could have her thrown out with a single phone call. And she had done it without blinking. As the floor numbers ticked upward, Emily gripped the folder tighter. She didn't know why, but a strange shiver ran down her spine. Something told her this was only the beginning, and she had no idea how much her life was about to change. The elevator doors slid open with a metallic chime, and Emily stepped out, her grip still tight on the folder. Her heart hadn't slowed since that confrontation, and she was desperate to finish the delivery and get out of this building before anyone decided to toss her back to the street. She weaved through the hallway, scanning the labels on each office door, until she found the name on the manifest. E. Blake. Emily stopped cold. No way. Of course it's him. She stood outside the door for half a second, then knocked, hard. "Delivery," she called, trying to keep her voice steady. "Come in," came a low reply. The door opened into a sleek corner office, sunlight pouring across glass and steel. Ethan Blake was standing behind his desk, jacket off now, tie loosened slightly, still looking infuriatingly composed. His eyes flicked up, locking on hers immediately. "You again," he said, that same faint smirk curling his mouth. Emily stepped inside, dropped the folder on his desk with a sharp thud. "Here, the file you apparently couldn't wait for." Her tone was clipped, her frustration raw. Ethan chuckled softly, as if her defiance entertained him. "Most couriers just hand things over and leave. You look ready to argue about something else." Emily folded her arms. "Not here to argue, just here to do my job." Ethan's gaze sharpened. He picked up the folder, flipped it open, and then, out of nowhere, he grabbed another set of papers from his desk. "Humor me for a second," he said, sliding the second contract toward her. "What do you see wrong with this?" Emily blinked. "I'm not. Just look," Ethan interrupted, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed. His eyes challenged her without words. She stared down at the pages. Legal jargon, clauses stacked on top of clauses. But something snagged her attention almost immediately. Her fingers itched. Without thinking, she grabbed a pen from his desk and began marking. "This section," she said, tapping hard on a paragraph. "The penalty clause is way too vague. You're basically giving the other party a free pass to interpret it however they want." She flipped a page, underlining furiously. "And here, this lets them walk away without notice and still collect payment. Who drafted this?" Ethan didn't answer. He just watched her, silent, his expression unreadable as she tore through his contract like a storm. 2 minutes later, Emily slapped the pen down and pushed the papers back toward him. Her pulse was racing, her cheeks flushed from the adrenaline of spotting loopholes faster than she thought possible. "There, fix those before someone bleeds money." The room went dead quiet. Ethan stared at her, then slowly, very slowly, a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Impressive," he murmured. Emily narrowed her eyes. "What was that? Some kind of test?" "Yes," Ethan said simply, leaning forward now, resting his elbows on the desk. "And you passed." Emily scoffed, snatching up her delivery receipt. "Great. Now can I leave?" But as she turned toward the door, Ethan's voice followed her, calm and deliberate. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m., my office, if you have the guts." Emily froze mid-step, spinning back toward him. "Excuse me?" He stood, towering over the desk now, confidence radiating off him. "You clearly have a mind for this work. You see things others miss. So, come back tomorrow. Let's see what you can really do." Her chest tightened. "I'm not a lawyer. I deliver contracts. That's it." "Then prove me wrong," Ethan replied, without missing a beat. His eyes locked on hers, and for the first time she saw something behind that CEO coolness. Genuine intrigue. Emily hesitated, her hand still on the door handle. 1,000 thoughts crashed through her mind. Bills to pay, rent overdue, No degree, no plan beyond surviving each week. But there was something about the way he said it. Like he was daring her, like he already knew she was more than what she believed. She opened the door, heart hammering. "We'll see," she muttered, not looking back. As she stepped into the hallway, the buzz of the office swirled around her, phones ringing, footsteps clicking, conversations murmuring. But Emily barely heard any of it. Her mind was racing faster than her feet as she headed for the exit. Outside, the late morning sun hit her face, and she drew in a shaky breath. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. The words repeated in her head over and over, louder than the traffic, louder than the city itself. She had no idea what she was walking into, but she couldn't shake the grin tugging at her lips. Something had just shifted, and Emily Carter wasn't about to back down. The next morning, Emily stood outside the mirrored glass entrance of Anderson & Cole law firm, gripping the strap of her second-hand purse so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart thudded hard, but she forced herself to step through the revolving door. She wasn't in her Courier hoodie anymore. Today she wore a light gray blouse, black slacks that were just a touch too long, and worn pumps polished within an inch of their lives. Cheap, yes, but clean, presentable. Inside, heads turned. Whispers rose as she crossed the marble floor. A few associates glanced at her from over their laptops with faint smirks, their eyes sweeping over her outfit like knives. Emily kept her chin high. Let them look. Near the elevators, a friendly voice cut through the tension. "Hey!" Emily turned and found a young woman with warm hazel eyes and a bright smile. Her nameplate read, Lena Morris, Executive Assistant. Lena leaned in conspiratorially and whispered, "Ignore them, I like you already. Go knock 'em out." That tiny flicker of support hit Emily like a shot of adrenaline. She grinned, despite herself. "Thanks, I'll try." The elevator doors opened, and Emily rode up alone this time, her reflection staring back at her in the polished steel walls. "This is insane. But you asked for it, Blake. Let's see who's laughing when this is over." The moment she stepped onto the 28th floor, the hum of activity hit her. Phones ringing, printers whirring, voices tossing around legal terms she barely understood. But Ethan's office was dead ahead, its door open as if he'd been expecting her all along. Ethan Blake stood behind his desk, jacket on, tie straightened, a completely different energy from yesterday's encounter. He looked up slowly, that signature calm smirk appearing as their eyes met. "You showed up." Emily stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind her. "You told me to." He picked up a thick stack of papers from his desk and placed them in front of her with a dull thump. 15 minutes. Find the errors." She stared at the stack, then at him. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Ethan said, leaning against the edge of his desk, arms crossed. "Go." Something inside her ignited. Emily dropped her purse on the floor, grabbed a pen from the cup on his desk, and spread the contracts open. Her eyes scanned the first page, catching a poorly worded clause almost instantly. She circled it, then underlined a hidden penalty buried in fine print. Her pen flew across the paper, notes scrawling in the margins. Minutes blurred. Page after page, her hand never stopped moving. Her pulse raced. Sweat beaded at her temple, but she ignored it. She muttered under her breath as she read, "This clause contradicts page 3. Who wrote this garbage?" Ethan watched silently at first, but as the seconds ticked by, his expression shifted. That amused smirk faded into something sharper, more focused. His brows rose as Emily caught another flaw and another, tearing through what he thought would slow her down. "She's actually good. Really good." Around minute 13, Emily tossed her pen onto the stack and straightened her posture, breathing hard. Done. Ethan took the papers, skimming through her red marks. He stayed quiet, eyes darting across every line she'd touched. The silence stretched, tension coiling tight in the room. Finally, he looked up, the corner of his mouth curving into a genuine smile this time. Not the mocking kind, but one of surprise and respect. "You found all of them," he said quietly. Then he added, "Most of my associates wouldn't catch half these mistakes in a day." Emily folded her arms, still catching her breath. "Well, I'm not most of your associates. For a beat, they just stared at each other. Then Ethan's voice dropped lower, steady and deliberate. "Emily Carter, welcome to the arena." Emily felt a rush of pride surge through her chest, mixed with disbelief. Just yesterday, she was pedaling through traffic to drop off documents. Now she was standing in front of a CEO who actually looked impressed. The whispers in the hall, the smirks, the cheap clothes, none of it mattered. In that moment, Emily knew she had just stepped into something far bigger than a delivery job, and she wasn't about to back down. Her fingers curled around the edge of the desk, heart pounding, ready for whatever challenge came next. This was only the beginning, and everyone in that building was about to find out exactly who Emily Carter was. The hum of the 28th floor buzzed with tension that afternoon. Emily stepped out of Ethan's office with a stack of marked-up contracts in her arms, her pulse still high from the test she had just crushed. But the hallway didn't greet her with praise. It hit her with hostile stares. Whispers trailed her every step. At the end of the corridor, a tall man in an expensive suit leaned casually against a filing cabinet. Caleb Turner, a senior attorney with years under his belt, known for being ruthless in meetings and merciless with anyone who threatened his reputation. His sharp eyes followed Emily like a predator watching prey. "You've got nerve walking in here like you belong," Caleb said as she passed. His tone was laced with contempt. Emily didn't stop. "I'm just doing the work," she replied, keeping her voice calm. But Caleb pushed off the cabinet, stepping into her path. "Work? You're a delivery girl. You're not qualified to touch those contracts, let alone sit in on meetings. You don't deserve that desk." A few associates nearby pretended to type, but were clearly listening. The air tightened around them. Emily set the stack down on a nearby table and faced him fully, eyes steady. "Then prove you're better than me," she said, her words icy, sharp enough to cut through the silence. Caleb's lips twitched into a smirk. "Fine. Let's see how you handle a real meeting." Within minutes, they were in the main conference room. A long oak table stretched across the room, walls lined with glass, sunlight spilling in. Senior attorneys filled the seats, murmuring among themselves as Ethan walked in and took a seat at the head of the table. His eyes flicked from Caleb to Emily with a hint of curiosity. "This meeting wasn't on my calendar," Ethan said smoothly. Caleb adjusted his tie. "I thought it would be educational. Let's see if our new assistant can spot errors in a live review." He slid a thick contract across the table toward Emily. "Go on, show us what you've got." Emily's heartbeat thudded in her ears, but she sat down, flipping the pages with quick, precise motions. The room quieted. Caleb leaned back, arms folded, confident she would stumble. She read in silence, her eyes scanning line after line. Then she stopped, tapped her pen against the paper, and looked up. "Clause 12-2, she said clearly. Caleb's smirk deepened. "What about it?" Emily turned the contract so everyone could see and tapped the section again. "It contradicts Section 9.4. According to your own wording, the client would owe damages even if the supplier breaches first. That's not just sloppy. It's dangerous. You'd cost them money they don't owe." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. A few attorneys shifted in their chairs, whispering under their breath. One of them looked at Caleb, frowning. Caleb's smirk faltered. "That's not what it means," he said quickly. Emily leaned forward, her voice steady, but cutting through like a blade. "Then explain why you gave them two opposing obligations. Go ahead, I'll wait." Caleb opened his mouth, then closed it again. No words came. His jaw tightened, and his hand gripped the edge of the table. The silence in the room became deafening. Every eye was now on him. Ethan broke the tension with a low, amused chuckle. He looked at Emily, his tone warm but commanding. "Keep going, Emily. What else do you see?" A flicker of pride surged through her. She turned another page, scanning quickly, finding another vague clause, another inconsistency. Each time, her pen struck like lightning, her voice calm but firm as she explained the flaw. The room shifted. Murmurs of surprise, even admiration, rippled through the attorneys. By the time she finished, Caleb's face was pale, his fists clenched beneath the table. Emily closed the contract with a decisive thud and slid it back to him. "If you're going to try to humiliate me," she said evenly, "at least bring your best work." The room stayed frozen for a heartbeat. Then Lena, standing near the back with a stack of notes, let out a low whistle and grinned. A few others followed with chuckles, breaking the tension. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face as he met Emily's gaze. "Well done," he said simply, pride unmistakable in his voice. Caleb pushed back from the table abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Without a word, he stormed out, leaving a trail of stiff silence behind him. Emily stood slowly, gathering her papers, her heart still racing but her spine straight as steel. Around her, the room was alive with whispers, some impressed, some stunned. Ethan's voice cut through them all, steady and clear. "Emily," he said, "be ready. This is only the beginning." She met his eyes, a spark of defiance and pride in her own. Let it begin, she thought. And for the first time since she'd stepped into this firm, she felt like she wasn't just surviving, she was winning. The office had emptied hours ago, but the soft hum of a printer and the faint tapping of pens kept the 28th floor alive. Emily sat at a long table stacked with contracts, sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair slightly messy from running her hands through it. She was still catching her breath from the fiery showdown with Caleb earlier, but there was no time to dwell. Ethan had dropped 3 urgent cases on her desk before disappearing into another meeting. Now, close to midnight, the heavy silence was broken by the sound of footsteps. Ethan appeared in the doorway, jacket slung over his shoulder, tie loosened. He didn't look like the untouchable CEO at that moment. He looked like someone who had been fighting his own battles all day. He walked over without a word, watching her scan yet another page with laser focus. He could see the notes scribbled in the margins, the circles around every loophole she found. He stayed silent for a moment, just observing. She belongs here, he thought, not for the first time. Emily felt his presence before she saw him. She looked up, startled to find him so close. "You're still here?" she asked, trying to sound casual, even though her heartbeat jumped. Ethan set his jacket on a chair and took a slow sip from a coffee cup he was holding. "So are you," he said, his voice calm, but carrying something deeper. "Most people would have gone home hours ago." Emily looked back down at the page, hoping he couldn't read the heat rising in her cheeks. "Most people don't have something to prove," she replied softly, circling another line on the contract. Ethan reached for another stack of papers, scanning quickly. He chuckled under his breath. "You know, I've worked with dozens of associates who brag about their degrees and experience, but none of them caught what you caught today." She glanced up sharply. "That doesn't mean I belong here." Ethan set the papers down and leaned a little closer, his eyes steady on hers. "Emily, you don't just belong here. You're shaking the ground under people who thought they were untouchable." For a moment, the weight of those words settled over her. She didn't know what to say, so she focused on the page in front of her, pen tapping nervously against the margin. Ethan noticed. He reached over to the side table and grabbed another coffee, handing it to her. "Here," he said, voice softer now. "You look like you need it." Emily hesitated, then took it. Their fingers brushed, just barely, but the spark that shot through her felt way too real. She quickly looked back at the contract, hoping he didn't notice. Ethan tilted his head, studying her face in the warm glow of the desk lamp. "You're not like anyone in this firm," he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. Her heart thudded. She forced a laugh, trying to deflect. "I'm just trying to keep up, nothing more." But Ethan didn't look away. "No, Emily, you're trying to outpace everyone here, and you're succeeding." She felt a strange mix of pride and fear churn inside her. She wasn't used to compliments, not like this, not from someone like him. The air between them thickened, heavier than the piles of contracts on the table. Emily pushed her chair back slightly, breaking the moment. "I really need to finish these," she murmured, eyes back on the paper. Ethan leaned back, a small smile playing on his lips. He didn't press further. Instead, he grabbed a pen and joined her, flipping through a page, marking something she'd missed. Their elbows nearly touched as they worked in silence, the only sounds the scratch of pens and the distant buzz of the city outside. Minutes turned into an hour. At one point, Emily glanced up and caught him watching her, not like a boss sizing up an employee, but like a man genuinely intrigued. Their eyes locked, and for a split second, everything else in the room vanished. Her chest tightened, and she quickly looked back down, pen moving faster just to keep her hands busy. Ethan didn't look away immediately. Instead, he let out a soft breath, almost a laugh, then turned back to his own notes. The clock ticked past midnight. Emily felt the weight of exhaustion, but she also felt something else. A flicker she couldn't name, a pull she couldn't deny. Ethan gathered a few finished contracts, stacking them neatly. "You've done more in a day than some do in a month," he said, his voice low but sincere. Emily gave a tired smile. "I told you, I just want to do the job." Ethan watched her for a moment longer, then nodded slowly, as if he understood something she didn't dare admit. As she sipped the coffee he gave her, Emily felt it, a subtle shift, a connection neither of them planned for, growing quietly in the shadows of late nights and endless paperwork. And deep down, she knew this was no longer just about the job. Something bigger was beginning, and it terrified her as much as it thrilled her. The morning after that long night of quiet sparks, Emily walked into the firm, expecting another marathon of contracts. Instead, Lena rushed up to her desk, eyes wide, whispering fast. "Emily, you need to get to the boardroom. Now. Caleb just filed a formal complaint against you." Emily froze, the words hitting like a punch. A complaint? She grabbed her notes and strode down the hall, heart hammering, trying to stay calm. Every step echoed through the corridor as whispers trailed behind her. She could feel the eyes of those who doubted her from the start, waiting to see her fall. Inside the boardroom, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The long table was packed with partners and senior associates. Caleb Turner sat near the head, smug and confident, flipping through a folder as if victory was already his. Ethan sat at the far end, arms crossed, watching everything with a steady, unreadable gaze. Barnes, the senior director, cleared his throat. "Caleb Turner has raised a serious concern about the hiring of Ms. Carter." Caleb leaned forward, his voice smooth but dripping with condescension. "Emily Carter lacks proper credentials. She was brought in without going through standard procedures. She is not qualified to review our contracts, let alone represent our work. I request her immediate removal from sensitive cases." Murmurs rippled through the room. Emily's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to stand taller. Ethan broke the whispers with a calm but razor-edged tone. "Caleb, if you're going to accuse one of my people, you'd better have proof." Caleb smirked, tapping the folder. "The proof is in her lack of certifications, Mr. Blake. We are a law firm, not a training ground for couriers." Emily felt the burn in her chest turn into steel. She rose slowly from her chair, gripping the folder she had carried in. Her voice was clear and firm. "If credentials are the only thing that matter, then explain this." She opened her folder and pulled out a contract, the very one she had spent half the night perfecting with Ethan. She placed it on the table with a loud, sharp thump that made several people flinch. "This," she said, pushing it toward Barnes, "was a multi-million-dollar contract that had been prepared by your seasoned associates. It was riddled with errors. Errors that, if signed, would have cost this firm $5 million. Caleb scoffed. "That's a bold claim from someone who—" "Read it," Emily cut him off, her tone fierce. "Look at the revisions I made, every clause I corrected, every loophole I closed." Barnes adjusted his glasses and began flipping through the pages. Other partners leaned in, scanning the red marks and side notes. The room grew silent as they saw the precision, the detail, the way each correction protected the client and the firm. Emily's heart pounded, but she didn't look away. She locked eyes with Caleb, letting every word land like a hammer. "I may not have your title, Caleb, but I've done more to protect this firm in 2 weeks than you've done in years. $5 million. Saved. By me. Is that enough qualification for you?" Caleb's smirk vanished. His jaw clenched, but no words came. The weight of the room shifted. Every eye turned toward him, some in shock, some in quiet satisfaction. Ethan leaned back in his chair, a small, proud smile breaking through his usual calm. Well said, Emily. His voice was low, but it carried through the room like a victory bell. Barnes set the contract down and nodded slowly. I've seen enough. He looked straight at Caleb. Your complaint is dismissed, and for the record, I suggest you spend less time trying to undermine your colleagues and more time checking your own work. A wave of applause broke out from the far end of the table. Lena, standing by the door, clapped the loudest, grinning ear to ear. Several others joined in, murmuring praise. Caleb's face reddened. He shoved his papers back into his folder and stormed out without another word, the door slamming shut behind him. Emily stood there, chest heaving, a mix of adrenaline and relief washing over her. The murmurs grew into smiles, a few nods of respect from partners who hadn't even looked at her before. Ethan caught her gaze across the table, his eyes warm, proud, and something else she couldn't quite name. He gave her a slight nod, as if to say, "You earned this." Emily exhaled slowly, gripping the edge of the table to steady herself. She had walked into this building as a delivery girl no one believed in. Now, she was the woman who had silenced her loudest critic and proven, beyond all doubt, that she belonged. And as the applause faded, she knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Saturday night settled over the city like a soft blanket of lights. Emily smoothed the hem of her simple black dress as she stepped into Riverside Ember, a warm, intimate restaurant overlooking the water. She had no idea why Ethan had insisted on meeting her here, only that his tone over the phone had been unusually serious. Inside, candlelight flickered across polished wood tables, and a low hum of conversation mixed with the soft strains of a jazz band in the corner. Emily spotted him instantly. Ethan Blake, the man who once stared her down in a cramped elevator, now waiting in a tailored navy suit, his eyes lighting up the second she walked in. "Emily," he said, standing as she approached. He pulled out her chair, the gesture unusually tender for the sharp-edged CEO she thought she knew. She sat, a nervous laugh escaping. "Okay, what's this all about? You sounded intense." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he signaled the waiter, and within minutes, they were sharing plates of seared scallops and steak, talking lightly about the chaos of the week. But Emily could feel it. Beneath every word, something unspoken simmered. Finally, after the plates were cleared and the jazz band shifted into a slow ballad, Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and placed a small envelope on the table. Emily frowned. "What's that?" "Open it," he said, his voice low, steady. Her fingers trembled slightly as she slid the paper out. She expected maybe a contract, another challenge. But as her eyes scanned the words, her breath caught. It wasn't a contract. It was a marriage license application, their names already typed in neat black letters. She looked up at him, stunned. "Ethan, what is this?" He leaned in, his gaze locking onto hers with that same intensity that first rattled her in the elevator. "Emily Carter, from the moment you stood in that elevator and told me I could wait like everyone else, you flipped my entire world upside down." His voice deepened, rich with sincerity. "You've challenged me, humbled me, and made me believe in something I didn't think I deserved. So now—" He reached into his pocket again and revealed a small, velvet box. Her eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a stunning ring that caught the candlelight like a burst of stars. "I'm asking you, right here, right now," Ethan continued, his tone unshakable, "to be my wife. Will you marry me?" For a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt, the voices and music around her fading to nothing but the sound of her own heartbeat. She thought of every moment, the humiliation, the whispers, the nights spent scribbling notes until dawn, the way Ethan's eyes softened when no one else was looking. Tears welled in her eyes before she even realized. She laughed through them, shaking her head in disbelief. "Ethan Blake, you're insane," she whispered, her voice breaking as a tear slipped down her cheek. "But yes, I'll marry you." The restaurant erupted into applause. Nearby diners smiled, clapped, and a few even cheered as Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger. Emily looked down at the sparkling band, then back up at him, her heart full in a way she had never imagined. Ethan stood and pulled her gently to her feet. "You fought every battle they threw at you," he said softly, his forehead brushing hers. "Now, let's win the rest together." Emily wrapped her arms around him, laughter and tears mixing as she whispered, "I didn't just find a job here. I found you." He kissed her then, deep, certain, and full of everything they had been holding back. The room blurred into nothing, the world beyond the restaurant forgotten. When they finally pulled apart, Emily felt lighter than she ever had before. The woman who once pedaled across the city with a stack of contracts was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, braver, and loved beyond measure. The applause slowly faded. The jazz band played on, and Emily sat back down, her hand in Ethan's, the ring catching the light as if sealing a promise. This wasn't just an ending. It was the start of something extraordinary. And as she looked at Ethan with a smile through her tears, she knew, without a single doubt, that every battle, every scar, had led her exactly here. In life, moments of unexpected challenge often reveal who we truly are. Emily's journey reminds us that your worth is not defined by a title or where you come from. It's defined by how you rise when others doubt you. She stepped into a high-pressure environment, faced judgment from seasoned professionals, and proved her value through action, not words. For many of us, whether we're starting over, switching careers, or simply feeling overlooked, this story is a powerful reminder. Preparation and courage can open doors you never imagined. When someone tells you that you don't belong, let your work speak so loudly that their doubts are drowned out. Never underestimate how a single act of bravery can change the course of your future. Even deeper, it reminds us to look beyond labels. The CEO saw Emily's potential where others saw only a delivery girl. Sometimes, the most life-changing opportunities come when someone believes in you, and when you believe in yourself first. What about you? Have you ever been underestimated and proved them wrong? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to read it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next inspiring story.